Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, a part of our series, Advice and Perspectives from Friends of UConn, where UConn Center for Career Development will bring guests to you to talk about the career journey in these tumultuous times. We're planning a mix of alums and experts on starting, restarting, and surviving career-wise in this economy. My name is Lisa McGuire, and I'm with the Center for Career Development. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see your attendee interface on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Today's webinar is designed to be interactive with a Q&A format. I'll ask Nick some prepared questions, but the value of this session is to have your questions answered. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions to us by typing your questions into the panel on the control panel. We encourage you to send in your questions at any time during the presentation and we'll address them throughout. Note that today's presentation is being recorded and will be provided in 48 hours. With that out of the way, let's get to the reason we're all here. Please let me introduce our guest, UConn alum Nick Wagner Sr., Organizational Development Consultant at Cigna. Nick is an innovator sharing his ideas and experiences to empower and inspire people to reach their full potential. He's had a diverse career as an entrepreneur, IT professional, and now HR professional, and successfully been able to inspire people throughout, mentoring, coaching, social media, and now his family's nonprofit for almost 20 years. In addition to his role at Cigna, Nick is very close to releasing his first book, 10 Secrets to Success After Graduation, and he's published numerous LinkedIn articles on the topic, which I've read and they're very good. Nick also hosts a weekly podcast, Full Potential, where he interviews influencers, innovators, leaders, motivators, philanthropists, and technologists. His guests share ideas and experiences to empower and inspire people to reach their full potential. You can find the Full Potential podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify, and Anchor. Without further ado, let's get to the reason we're all here. Hi, Nick. First of all,
thank you for having me, Lisa.
Sure. So tell us, Nick, what is an organizational development consultant and what do you do at Cigna?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I often joke that when I graduated from UConn in 2003 with an MIS degree, I never thought I'd end up as an HR professional, number one. And if you had asked me in 2003 what an organizational development consultant was, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. So, so great question. And so, as you mentioned, I work at Cigna. So we're a global health services company, headquartered in Bloomfield, Connecticut. We do business in over 30 countries and jurisdictions around the world. And many of you probably know us if you're here in the U.S. for health insurance products, medical, dental. And then the end of 2018, we purchased Express Scripts. So Express Scripts was a pharmacy benefit manager, and we now have have that as part of our suite of products. So I work in the HR team that's part of our enterprise team, and an organizational development consultant. So it's an interesting role. I would say number one, it's very ambiguous because literally every day is different. So I support 5 different organizations, and I support them for, I'll give you the list. It's consultation and diagnostics is really the foundation of everything. So we try to understand like what is the need of my client. And then it ends up being, I usually help with team effectiveness, org design, change leadership, some learning and development, some leadership development. And this could be with an individual. So I could be doing a 360 debrief with one individual. I could be doing an intervention with a team of 5 to 10 people, or I could be putting together a learning strategy for our entire organization. So it's very different every day, but essentially we help these organizations solve different problems related to to the topics I just mentioned. And I think the interesting thing is it's very different from, I know Lisa and I know each other from when I ran our early career IT program at Cigna called TechDP. That was a very different role doing running a leadership development program versus being an organizational development consultant, because that was every year we recruited at the same time, every year we hired people at the same time. So it was a much more cyclical and I would say more easily predictable than the job I'm in now, just because I do such a wide variety of things. Oh, you're on mute, Lisa, sorry.
Sorry, I've got lawn mowing and all kinds of things outside going on, including a 50th birthday party on the street. Um,
Very fun.
so anyway, sorry about that. So you must be incredibly busy right now with Cigna and the pandemic. How does it affect your business, and how does it affect the morale of the people you're working with in terms of, you know, their everyday, and keep them up, and how are people coping, and how are you helping
So
them?
it's interesting questions. Our HR team is very busy, as you can imagine, with everything going on with COVID-19. We launched, you know, at this point, it's probably 6 or 7 weeks ago. We launched an internal website for our own employees with all the resources that are available for, you know, that are COVID-19 specific. So as you can imagine, there's a lot going on in the sense of, you know, how do we take care of our employees? We had to move everyone to work at home. That wasn't someone that had to be in a facility. And we do have some people that are still in facilities, like the people that are filling prescription drug orders, and some of our clinicians that meet with patients in, you know, in their homes. But everyone else moved to work at home, which, as you can imagine, moving tens of thousands of people to work at home is quite an undertaking. So that's been one way that we've been supporting people is that transition. We had a really large work at home culture to begin with, and the technology to do it, but we definitely didn't have the entire company working at home, or almost the entire company. So that's been quite a transition. And again, a lot of people had already worked with people on teams that had worked at home, but now to have everyone working at home every day has been very different. Especially, you know, Lisa and I were talking before this. I have an 8, 6, and 4-year-old that I think are downstairs watching TV right now and attempting to be quiet. It's very different working at home when your kids are at school versus working at home when you're educating your kids and they're here running around playing, and your spouse or significant other is also working. So that's been a challenge, not just for our employees at Cigna, but I think for a lot of people. But so no, it's been we in HR have been very busy trying to get resources available for, you know, all of our employees, and then eventually, as we move back, you know, when we get to the point of reopening offices, HR will be a part of that too. And what does that look like? I've had the opportunity. So my management knows that I have my podcast outside of work, and they actually asked me to do a podcast inside of work for our employees and managers. And I'm doing little short podcast episodes where I interview employees and managers about different things that they're doing to help them get through this global pandemic, which has been really cool. So employees sharing stories with other employees to hopefully help them with different you know, ideas and ways that they might be managing things. So it's been cool to have my my personal interests collide with my professional interests. But from I think the other thing I'll highlight is, and I think a lot of people are realizing this now, you know, a lot of times we would do a lot of work in person with teams. So if I was going to do an example, if I was going to do a Clifton Strengths team session, we would usually do those in person. And now we can't. So we're doing everything virtually now. And I think a lot of people are realizing, not just at Cigna, but I think across a lot of industries, that you can actually do a lot more virtually if you structure the trainings correctly. What I mean is, you don't have people on a call for 8 hours at a time. You give them breaks. If you use video like this, if you make it more interactive with Q&A, there's ways that you can make the virtual work. While a lot of people still like that in person, while we can't do that, I think we're doing a good job of managing the virtual piece as well as we can. I think back to your question about morale. I think we're extremely lucky at Cigna because we work for an employer that really values their employees, and we've done a lot of really great things for our employees just to take care of our people. So I think that helps with morale when you know your company cares about the employees and our clients and our customers that we support. But we also know that we are extremely needed during this time simply because we are a health services company. So we need to make sure that people get their prescriptions. We need to make sure that people can use telehealth to go and get, we're even doing telehealth dentist appointments now. So we know that we're integral to everyone's health before this pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic. So we've done a lot to, I think, make sure that we're helping our customers. And so I think a lot of us are energized by the mission of the company even before this happened. So now more than ever, I think a lot of us are even more energized because of that. But I think just in general, I think a lot of people, back to your original question of how do you take care of yourself during this, I think everyone processes change differently. I actually had a conversation with someone today, and there is no right or wrong way to feel right now. And the way I process change with an 8, 6, and 4-year-old at home and my wife working is different from how you, Lisa, process change and how you're working in your household. And I think we've been really blessed that my wife and I both are still working virtually, and we're all healthy. But we know people that have been laid off. We know people that have gotten COVID-19. So I think those of us that are healthy and still employed, we have to figure out how we can give back. So I think a lot of people are trying to give back where they can, but I think you have to figure out what helps you kind of get through this, whether that's, there's a laundry list of things. It could be exercise, it could be meditation, it could be checking in with family members, through video chats like this. It could be going on hikes, whatever it is for you. I think you have to find that. And I think that varies for a lot of people, really what's going to help them. So, but I think the other thing is just don't be afraid to talk about it, because everyone's having a difficult time right now.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. And so let's shift a little bit to, thank you for laying out the climate of the current workforce, but a lot of our listeners are here because they're in the job search, right? So many folks are graduating this week and they're without jobs. Some had jobs rescinded, but a lot of them didn't have jobs to begin with. And we also have some who have recently lost their jobs. And so I think the combination makes the job search pretty competitive, right? In this climate, the job hunt. And in fact, some of the more experienced workers are competing with entry level, with others for entry level jobs. So one of the questions that we've gotten frequently, and I just got in the question panel here, is how does someone make themselves stand out? How do they set themselves apart so that they'll be noticed and hired?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and you bring up a really interesting point. Your point about that a lot of our recent grads are now competing with more experienced professionals simply because so many people have been displaced out of their current roles because of COVID-19. So I think a couple things. I think this really varies depending on your industry, number one. So there are absolutely industries that are still hiring. And then there are industries that are obviously much more affected by COVID-19 than others. So, and if you're in the leisure and hospitality industry right now, that is going to be a much more difficult, the more difficult time trying to find a role there than you would if you were in the healthcare industry, as an example. And I don't just mean health services like what I do, but if you're a nurse or a doctor, things like that. So I think it really depends on the industries. I think that's just number one. And think about what industry you're in and how that might affect this. I think just some general tips on how to stand out and what to do during this time looking for jobs. So I think there's a couple situations. Those of you that, and I'll run through them, and Lisa, we can recap this at the end. But those of you that have jobs lined up for post graduation, congrats, and that's fantastic. And if they start in June or July, I can 100% recommend that you want to reach out to the person that hired you, whether it's your hiring manager or your HR contact at that company, and check in just to make sure that nothing has changed. Just check in and say, hey, wanted to see how everything's going. Anything else I need to do before I start? I'm really excited. I graduate, whatever it is, just to make sure that they know you're still there and you're excited to take that job. So for those of you in that situation, I would do that. And I would even recommend that in a non-pandemic, right? Just because a lot of people get, I know when I hired people for Tech DP as an example at Cigna, we'd give out offers in the fall to start July the following year. That's a long time. So I even recommended that to people when this wasn't going on. So for those of you in that situation, I would do that. For those of you that had a job and then it was rescinded, whether that was an internship or a full-time position, I would absolutely still follow back up with that employer and find out if the situation changes, is there a possibility to get that job back, right? So if it's a summer internship, that might be a little tricky because summer would obviously be ending. But if it was a summer internship, maybe you can ask them, well, could I do a virtual internship during the semester? Could I do a 4-week internship during winter break? Or could I, be offered a summer internship for next summer? So I think from an internship perspective, that's the question I would ask. And look, they might say, yeah, glad you asked, absolutely, and have that conversation with you. Or they might say, it's too uncertain at this time, I don't know. But I think it's worth asking that question. If it was a full-time job, I think you ask the same question and you ask them, understand that you've cut back your workforce and maybe delayed some of your offers. Could we delay my start date? So instead of canceling my job offer, could we delay my start date would be a question I'd ask. And the reason I would ask that is because if you've already done the background check, you've already done the drug test, and you're all ready to go, and it was really just a matter of waiting for you to start, maybe they'd be willing to delay your start date 6 months. And I know 6 months seems like an eternity. However, I think waiting that 6 months and then having that like in the distance and have that job offer is still better than no job offer. So I would ask that question for those of you that maybe had a full-time job offer and then had it rescinded. And if they say no, they can't extend your start date, I would stay in touch with the person that hired you and follow up with them every once in a while to find out when things might change, right? So things will change. Things are going to get better. I think we all know that, and we all just realize it's a matter of time. And the hope is that once that happens, and this situation is a little less scary, that people will start hiring again. So I would say stay in touch with those people. For those of you that do not have a job yet, whether it's an internship or a full-time position, so I think a couple things. I think if you're looking for a summer internship, it's probably going to be challenging to get a summer internship at this point, simply because even if it wasn't a global pandemic, I think this late, in the game, it'd be hard to find a summer internship for this summer. So I think for those of you looking for just summer work, my recommendation is see if you can actually intern somewhere and not get paid. Some companies will do that, some will not. I think it's worth asking though, because you need, for those of you that are not graduating this month, you need experience on your resume. And even if that means unpaid experience, you need experience. So that could mean talking with someone, talking to a nonprofit. That could mean talking to someone, networking with someone that owns their own business. A lot of, I think, nonprofits and small businesses are more likely to do a non-paid internship than large corporations. So I know Cigna, as an example, we will not hire you unless we pay you. That's just the way we do it, right? And I think Lisa will probably agree that a lot of larger corporations will do the same. But there's a lot of nonprofits out there that would love to have an intern for the summer at no cost. Absolutely love it, especially with how a lot of them are going to be just impacted from a donation perspective because of COVID-19, and they still need to get work done. So if I'm making this up, if you're a marketing major and you need a summer internship, you could volunteer for a nonprofit, do their social media from home, 20 hours a week, not get paid, still get the experience to put on your resume. And that I think would be a really viable option for a lot of you looking for internships. Just because I think it'd be really hard to find a paid internship at this point. For those of you looking for full-time work, I think it's a different story. I think there's still definitely opportunities to find full-time work. And I think really it goes back to your industry, and a lot of the tips that I share on that I would share with you, not in a normal time, I would share now as well. So I think it's a couple things, but I'm gonna give a shout out to Lisa. I think it's starting with your career center. So I can't stress that enough. Your career center is there to support you, like things like this. So the career center will help you update your resume to make sure it's fantastic and ready to go. They will do mock interviews with you, and they have employers knocking on their door saying, we want to hire your students. So that's actually the first place I would go, would be your career center. That if you are still in college, I would go see Lisa virtually or her peers and talk to them first. That's the first thing I would consider. If you're looking for a full-time job and you can't find a full-time job, I think you could at this point be open to taking a temp job. So I know a lot of people might not want to have a temp job or a contract to hire job, but a lot of companies will probably be doing more contract to hire jobs because of the uncertainty, where they hire you as a contractor, maybe on a 6-month contract, and then if you do well and they still need to hire you full-time, they can convert you to an employee. So don't just discount a temporary job or a contract job because it's not a full-time job. I think that would be actually a great opportunity in this current environment. I think the other thing that if you want to look for a full-time job and just you need to know where to look, I think it kind of depends on the industry and the company you want to look at. But if you're looking at a specific industry, I would say go check out the websites of the companies in that industry and check out their job boards and see if there's anything out there. An even better way to do it is actually network with people that work there. So if you want to work, I'm gonna make this up. If you want to work at ESPN and you know someone at ESPN, you want to connect to that person to ESPN and talk to them. Like, do they have a hiring freeze, or are they hiring people right now? So that would be a question I would ask. And if they are hiring and there's a position that interests you, can they get your resume to the hiring manager or the HR team? The chances of you getting an interview for a job are much higher if you've talked with a hiring manager or an HR person at that company, rather than just blindly applying on their company website. So if they've seen your resume ahead of you applying, there's a better chance that you're going to get a call back and an opportunity for an interview. So I think networking with people at the company you want to work at is a really great way to make that happen. If you try all these things and you're unable to find a job, whether it be a temp job or a full-time job, I think what I would do at this point is really three things. I would keep networking as much as you possibly can. You can use, and Lisa knows, I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I wish I had jumped on LinkedIn earlier in my career. I really didn't get into it until probably 5 years ago. So if any of you, that are still in college, don't use LinkedIn a lot, now is your time. It's free, and you will meet an amazing amount of people on there, and you have a great chance of finding your next role on LinkedIn, not just because they have jobs posted there, but because of who you connect with. So I would start connecting with people on LinkedIn. The other thing you could do is virtual meetups. So there used to be a lot of like meetups that people would do in person. So maybe it's like we're a designers meeting up, or where it's an agile meetup, or name the coding language meetup. A lot of those are going virtual now. So there's apps where you can find virtual meetups and meet people that way. I think that's a great way to do it. I think the other thing to Lisa's question about standing out is you want to keep refining your skills even though you're not working full time, or if you can't find that summer internship if you don't have a summer internship. So if you are a marketing major, you want to keep doing you want to, maybe if it's writing, or if it's copywriting, or if it's doing social media, or whatever you need to do to keep your craft up, you want to keep doing that. And maybe you design yourself a website to highlight all the work you've done. If you're a computer science major, you want to keep coding and putting code out on GitHub and sharing with the world the projects you're working on. If you're a digital media and design person, keep making videos and sharing those, right? So whatever your craft is, you want to keep practicing it. I can't stress that enough, because that's going to make you, just that much more marketable and keep your skills up. And again, I would share those things, right? So if you're a writer, you're a marketer and you like writing, or you're a communications major, start sharing all that on LinkedIn, or start sharing it on Medium. Whatever outlet you want to share it with, I would do that. So you keep doing projects. I think that's really important. And if that means, again, volunteering your time for nonprofits, or if you want to give back to where you went to high school, as an example, right? And do something for your old high school. Find out what that is, or if your family has your own business and you can give back to that. There are so many ways to keep your skills up and volunteer during this time. I think that would be a good way to stand out. And then I think the last thing, during this time that you could do to stand out is just keep learning. So that could mean using something like LinkedIn Learning, which is online, skills and courses and things like that. There's Khan Academy, there's Coursera. There's all sorts of online learning platforms you can keep learning new skills. And then if you really want to go, all in, I know that the engineering school just offered, scholarships for those that don't have jobs lined up for going to grad school. So you can always go to grad school. That's another option. So again, that's a big decision. It's a lot of money. I understand that, but that would be another option if you didn't find a job and you wanted to do something, in the fall and not wait any longer. So hopefully those are some ideas, Lisa, on what you could do to find a job or to stand out. I know I just covered a lot, but hopefully that gives some people some ideas.
So not only did you cover a lot, you generated about 100 questions on my list here. So I'm going to throw a few out so that maybe you can address them and in various degrees and or order. But the bottom line to what I'm hearing you say, or one of the bottom lines, is communication, right? You started with saying, if you have a job, or if you had a job rescinded, or your job is delayed or whatever, make sure you connect with the company. So communication is key. And if they cancel or they rescind your job, still offer to do a delayed start date, etc. So communication is definitely key. You gave a plug to the Career Center. Thank you very much. We also help new grads.
And she did not pay me or ask me to do that. That's from personal experience. From I did not use it enough in college, so I always make sure to tell people to use it.
Well, we appreciate that, Nick. And then, so a couple of other questions that were generated sort of in my thought while you were talking was, so I'm just going to throw a few out there and then you can jump off from there. So should a candidate, say a candidate is afraid to start, so suppose the company wants to do a virtual start or any kind of start, whatever it is, and they are personally not comfortable starting a job, do you recommend, again, it's that communication thing, but would you recommend that they reach out and ask for a delay, or would you say you gotta suck it up and go for it? So that's one question. The okay. Second question is, some people just need to get paid. They can't afford to do the volunteer thing that you've suggested. So in light of that, should they just take any job, whether it's in their area of expertise or not? And if so, what kinds of skills should they look to hone so that it makes it marketable when their when their area opens up, when their dream job area opens up? And then another question that along those sort of similar lines, I got two more for you, is when an industry, like you said, the entertainment industry or the hospitality industry is pretty much shut down, right? What do you think is similar, or what would you recommend? That's the only experience somebody has. That's where their dream job is. What could they do to get a job? And then finally, you talk a little bit about networking, and maybe you can expound on that in terms of how to network in this virtual atmosphere. Never mind network in general, but using your Husky network and LinkedIn a little bit more as a networking tool. So that should give you enough to pretty much ride us out, right?
So I think the first question around if you're worried about starting or afraid to start, what does that conversation look like? I think I would answer that. I think a typical HR answer, it depends. So it depends on what the reason is that you're afraid to start. If many companies, many companies at this point are going to start you virtually. So like everyone in Cigna, unless you're in a fulfillment center or you're a nurse, a frontline nurse, you are going to start virtually. So you actually absolutely want to ask those questions. Like, am I expected to go into the office, or am I going to be working virtually? If you're, there are some jobs that you have to be in person for, right? So I think it kind of depends on the job. But if you have the ability to work virtually, most companies I think at this point are going to start you virtually. So I think it really depends what your reason is for being afraid to start. If it's you have to move to another city to be in that job, or like wherever to actually start that job. I know a lot of employers are telling people, yeah, you can take the job, you can work remotely, and then once we're all back in the office, you can move then. So I think I always tell people this: if you don't ask, you're never going to know what the answer is, right? So if you need to delay the start date, and that's what you personally feel you need to do for whatever the reason is, then I think you need to ask that question. If you have to delay the start date because you're taking care of an elderly parent that has COVID-19, or you worrying about them having COVID-19, I'm pretty sure most employers are going to be understandable around that. So I think to your point, Lisa, it's all about communication and just have that conversation, right? And I think it just kind of depends what the situation is. So I think for that one, I would say no, don't just suck it up. I think you really have to have that conversation with whoever, the hiring manager or the HR team for that company.
I think that speaks to the culture, right? It tells us, it tells the candidate that's what the company culture is like. If they're not going to be understanding, maybe you don't want to work there anyway, right?
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's a
Yeah.
good
So
indicator.
the second question about like, I need money and I need a job. What do I do? Um, I'll say this: you will not always have your dream job when you're working. I'm going to say that. Like, I hate to, if anyone thought that, I'm sorry. You will not always have your dream job. You will, at some point in your career, have jobs that you don't like. But to Lisa's point, sometimes you have to get paid, and even the jobs that you don't necessarily like or you don't love, you're still going to learn something from those. So everything's a learning experience, even if you don't necessarily like it. So, I think at this point, some of you are not going to be able to find your dream job. And I think for a lot of people, I think it's hard for a lot of people to find their dream job right out of school to begin with, because a lot of people's dream jobs are not entry level positions, to be quite honest with people. So, I think the reality is this. I gave you a lot of ideas to help find a job if you don't have one, or if you can afford not to have one, some other things you can do if you don't have one. If you need a job, there are companies that are hiring. There are countless companies that are hiring. If you go on LinkedIn, there's a section on LinkedIn in the upper right-hand corner. If you go on a computer, not on your phone, not on the app, that's a whole section just about COVID-19, and they have an entire list of who's hiring right now. So there are absolutely people hiring. You might not find those jobs particularly interesting, or you might say to yourself, I went to school for X. I don't want to do Y. But back to Lisa's point, if you have a family, if you have a mortgage, if you have rent, if you have a car payment, whatever the case may be, and you need to eat, sometimes you're going to take a job you don't necessarily want. So I think it kind of depends on how long you think you can go looking for a job without having a job that you need. Now, also remember this: you can take a job that is not going to be a long-term job. Work there for 6 months while you're looking for the job that you want, and then leave after 6 months. I think people are going to be a lot more understanding of you changing jobs after 6 months or 3 months or 9 months or a year with everything going on right now, if they look at your resume, right? And if you had to explain that on your resume when you apply to what you would consider the job that you want, you would say, I needed a job while I was job searching, and I had bills, right? No one's gonna have a problem with that. So that would be my answer to that question. I think for the industries you mentioned, like that are really struggling, right? So if you're, in hospitality, or if you're in the airline industry, as an example, so I'll use the hospitality industry as an example. If you were going to go into hospitality and maybe hotel management or something like that as an example, you have tons of skills, customer service skills, that you could translate to other industries. So just because you wouldn't be working necessarily in a hotel doesn't mean you couldn't do something else. So I think it's how do you make your skills transferable to other industries and other jobs you could possibly do in the interim. I think one of those transferable skills is two of them is customer service and communication. So if you can work with customers and people, and you have good communication skills, those are really going to be good no matter what job that you go to do, because there's not a lot of jobs where you don't have to deal with people. Let's be honest. So I think that's one thing I would do specifically around, just trying to transfer some of your skills. And then I think the last question, and I think I got all four, around networking. So I think, right now, not being able to go out in person obviously restricts your options for networking, but I can't stress the power of LinkedIn enough. I really can't. It's my favorite social media site for a variety of reasons, but I love it because I learn something every time I go on there. So you do not have to be a creator and put content on LinkedIn like myself all the time to get a lot out of it. You can go on LinkedIn and just learn from reading other people's posts, reading other people's articles, watching their videos. So you can really just get a sense of, what are things you could be doing right now? What companies might you want to work for? You can talk to people. People don't find it strange if you just connect with someone at a company that you want to work at and say, hey, I'd love to chat with you about working at company X. Like it's not weird to get connection requests from people that you don't know, because that's the entire point of it, right? Is to network with people that you don't know. So I think it's probably one of the most powerful tools that we have, and I think we're lucky that we have it, because I think it will help you absolutely find someone that might eventually help you get a job. I think the other thing that Lisa mentioned, I think is really important, is your alumni network from UConn. So I think a lot of times it goes, maybe people don't think about it, but you have, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people have graduated from UConn, right, over however many years. But you have a huge amount of Huskies that graduated that are working at companies all around the world that you could reach out to. So if you go back to LinkedIn, it'll recommend based off of you having UConn as your school, like, hey, here are other people that went to UConn that you could connect with. And I've never said no to a connection request from someone that went to UConn that wanted to connect, right? So I think there's that. But there's also other apps out there, and I don't have specific apps that I'd recommend, but there are other apps out there, especially around mentors, that you can find a mentor. I think that's another great idea to do during this time. There's people love mentoring. Like I mentor probably 5 or 6 people through Cigna, some outside of Cigna. But find yourself a mentor. Now would be a great time to find yourself a mentor if you don't have one. And like I said, there's apps that specifically help do that. So you can download some of those on your phone and find that out. And then I think lastly, and I don't know if I said this earlier, you have your professors as well as another great place to network. Your professors are extremely connected individuals. A lot of times with other professors at other schools or in other programs, with a lot of people from industry, because maybe they came from industry or maybe they're working with people in industry. So if you can network with your professors as well, that's a great place to go because they often have a lot of connections.
That's great. And one of the questions then is a suggestion of what you would say in outreach. So for LinkedIn, just so everyone knows, the Career Center has several LinkedIn workshops and how to work with LinkedIn. Yep. And we also have the Husky Mentor Network, which is a place to go for, you can be a mentor or you can be a mentee. So it's just for UConn alums and UConn students. So that's another place to go if you go on our website, career.uconn.edu. But one of the questions is, give an example of a message that you would Nick, you said you've never said no. I've never said no. I don't know a single alum, I'm also an alum, who's ever said no to a UConn person reaching out, but somebody's asking for an example of specifics on what you would say on LinkedIn. And just before I let you go on that, LinkedIn is, as Nick says, a very powerful tool. And one of the other, there are 2 other uses or little tricks to it. If you look under UConn, you can look under, you search on UConn, and then there are, you can look at, then you click on alumni, you can see where they live, where they work, what their major was. And it's an amazing tool so that if you're looking at a company, you can see all the UConn alums who work at that company and you can reach out that way. And then the other way to use it is there are private groups. So if you're interested, I have a friend who tells a story much better than I can, but who was working with a student who was looking to get into the toy industry. She wanted to make toys. And there are small groups, these micro groups within LinkedIn for toy makers, for example. So a student reached out and said, hi, I'm a student at UConn and I'm interested in getting into this industry. Would you let me in your group? And wound up networking that way too. So networking takes a lot of different forms. So I'm sure you can take it from there, Nick, but just start with a suggestion on how would you respond? What would you respond to if somebody reached out to you?
Yeah, I mean, don't overcomplicate this, right? This is as simple as saying like, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm graduating from UConn. I'm graduating, or I just graduated, and I'm, searching for a job. I noticed you work at this company or in this industry. You have this experience, and I'd love to learn more about, what you do every day, if you like it, the pros and cons of it. I mean, it's no one says no to those. No one says no to those. The only thing people say no to on LinkedIn is when the first thing you ask them is, hey, do you want to buy my service? And it feels like spam. But they're going to look to see, they're like, oh, okay, this person goes to UConn, and that's the connection point. So I think it's just being honest on what you'd like out of it. And I didn't even know about maybe I did know about the mentor network, but that's another great opportunity. I did the UConn mentor network. I think that's a great point as well, Lisa. And, I think it's, back to the standing out piece. If you want to stand out more, you can take the, go the route of, posting content and sharing your voice, and sharing articles and writing, doing different things and making videos, if you want to do that, that will help you stand out if that's something you want to do. My recommendation with all social media when you're searching for a job is, LinkedIn is your professional network. So obviously you want to share content there. If you're applying for jobs, there's a good chance that your employer you're applying for will look you up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So my recommendation to everyone is typically that if your Facebook is for friends and family, it should be private, so no one other than friends and family can see it. Same with Instagram. Twitter, it depends what kind of content you're posting, but I would say same with Twitter. But LinkedIn, you want that open and you want it updated like your resume, so everyone can see it that you might be applying for a job with. So, but Lisa brings up some great points as well. It's the networking is. I've never said no to anyone that's wanted to connect because they wanted to learn more about what I did. So people the alumni are usually like very active as far as, hey, we'd be happy to help you and talk to you about what we're doing. The worst thing they say is no, and you just find the next person and you move on. So not a huge deal. I think the other thing that I would highlight around about the whole idea of like sharing your skills, Lisa, and what you do. If you are in certain fields where you have the ability, like you're a computer science major or you're a digital media major or you're an MIS major, and you have the ability to make a website and share your work, that's another great way to do that. Another great way to showcase what you do. So make like a personal portfolio and share it online. Then even if you're not one of those majors and you're not super tech savvy, there's ways that you can do that pretty inexpensively using technology, different websites online. So I think it's another good way to showcase what you're doing if you want to help stand out, just to kind of differentiate from yourself from someone else from a resume perspective.
So Nick, how did somebody stay positive in this search? So say they sent out, 5 LinkedIn requests, will you talk to me about, you're an alum, you want to help me, and they get ghosted kind of. And by the way, everyone, not everyone uses the messaging part of LinkedIn on a regular basis. So don't take it personally if it takes a while, because like Nick and I are probably answering things because we're looking at it, but there are a lot of people who don't, they simply don't see it. It has nothing to do with you or your message. So don't get discouraged by that. But Nick, do you have tips for staying positive in this environment where they're not getting answers quickly or as quickly as they would like to? Maybe they don't see any jobs. Again, as Nick said, there are plenty of jobs out there. If you use, again, the UConn Career Center, we have Handshake, which has thousands, literally thousands of jobs listed. And Nick, how do you stay positive? And then again, if you could repeat, because I know you already covered this, but what kinds of things should they look for? Say, if you're looking in Handshake for a job and there's thousands of jobs, but you start to sort it by, I want a job in this specific industry, and there's no jobs. How do they stay positive, and what kinds of things can they do to look for something that sort of fits, or think about the skills that might be similar?
So I think it's interesting. So, and this is, I'm 38, so I'm like Gen X, millennial, borderline, depending on what you read. I identify as a Gen X, but the college students today, everything has been like instant as far as like the information you can get, right? So like you need to search for something, you go online and you do a search for it, and you have Google and you have Wikipedia, and you want to listen to a song, you pull up the song. You want to watch a movie, you pull up the movie. You want to watch a show, you pull up the show. That was not the case for Lisa and I growing up, right? As examples. Job searches take time, right? Unfortunately, it's not an instant process. And I know that people don't want to hear that, but it sometimes can take months, and many months, right? And I think with this current situation, that may be the case. It might take many months. I know the job that I'm in at Cigna today, I started the job search at the beginning of 2017, and I didn't start the job I'm in right now until January of 2018. So from the time I decided to start looking, I talked to people, I interviewed, and went through, and then got my start date. It was a year from when I started. Now, I was picky with what I wanted, but I'm just giving that as an example. It doesn't happen overnight, right? I'm not telling all of you that it's going to take you a year to find a job. My point is, it's not an instant process, and you're going to have to be patient. How do you stay positive through all that? I think it's, what are little wins that you could find as you kind of go through it that may keep you happy, right? So maybe you ended up getting a mentor. Maybe you ended up getting an interview, even though you didn't get the job, you got an interview. So that's a step in the right direction. And every time you interview, it's good practice for the next interview you're going to have. So I think it's kind of taking it a day at a time, knowing and really setting expectations of yourself that you are not going to get a job from messaging 5 people on LinkedIn, in the first couple of days and thinking that's all it's going to take, right? It's going to take work. But that's not the case. That's the case even if we weren't in a global pandemic, that finding a job is hard. And that's why you have the Career Center. I can't tell you how, like Lisa just said, there's thousands of jobs that are currently out there in the app they use, Handshake, which a lot of colleges use, that are available for people that would be interested. So talk to a career counselor at the Career Center, and they can give you a lot of advice around this topic as well. And that's something that they'll do virtually with you. So I think that's a big one. I think back to your question, Lisa, around, I go through all this search and I just can't find a job that I like. It really comes down to the 2 options we talked about before. You can wait to find the job that you like and either do another job you don't like or volunteer somewhere. If everyone's financial situation is different, right? And I want to be very clear about that. Some people can afford to take the summer off and volunteer or, do other things while they wait for the job that they want. Others can't, and they might have to go out and get a job right away. And, I would say, do not be ashamed if you don't get the job that you've always wanted right out of school. Like, there is any job that you get, you should be proud of that job that you got. And I completely mean that, right? I worked retail for all years, all through college. And was that the job that I want to do the rest of my life? No. But did I learn a lot from it? Did it help me pay a lot of bills? Yes. So don't ever be ashamed of not getting the job that you've always dreamed of wanting. These are extraordinary circumstances, similar to really what happened in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. That I know I was not searching for a job then, but Lisa probably has some stories from people searching for jobs then that were pretty difficult. So, I think it really depends on your situation. But again, if you want to take a job now so you can get paid, even if it's not something you love, make the best of it, learn from it, get some experience for your resume, and then just keep searching for the job that you really want. That'd be my recommendation.
That's great. That's great advice. And I know that you did a recent podcast on this about continuing your networking. So once you have your job, when do you start networking again for your next job?
Yeah. So I'm the and I always joke I'm an extreme extrovert. So I actually love networking, and not everyone does, and I understand that, and it's not the most fun thing for everyone. I love networking. So I love meeting new people. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. Every Sunday night, I interview someone, as you mentioned earlier, Lisa, to share their career story, and I just love doing that. So for me, I always share with everyone that you should always be networking, because you never know when you're going to need another job, and that could be because you want a new opportunity or the company no longer wants you for that position, right? So, and I mean this both internally and externally. You could end up taking a new job internally where you are, and you would want to be networking to find that role. And if you're looking externally, same thing. So for me, networking is a way for me to learn and grow my network. And I've met people through LinkedIn that I've become friends with, which I know is people kind of laughing when I say that, but I actually have some friends that I've met through LinkedIn that they're fantastic people. And if it wasn't for that platform, I never would have met them. Any other questions in the Q&A?
I was just looking for some. I don't see any. Does anyone have any additional questions? I don't see any more unless yeah. So Nick, some closing thoughts. I mean, we're in a situation where we have to operate virtually. So, which when we research jobs, that's frequently virtual, and that hasn't changed, but it's at a new level now. And I'm curious on whether you have any thoughts on how to ascertain a company's culture virtually. Now, we talked earlier about if a company's not willing to cut you a little slack or let you delay your start or whatever, have a little give and take, that tells you a lot about their culture. But do you have any other suggestions on how to discern a company's culture in this virtual environment?
Yeah, so it's all about researching. So, research the company that you're interested in applying to or you're going to work at. You can start with their website. They're going to have a lot of great information on their website. But I think to kind of go deeper is check out their social media. Check out any media interviews that have been done by their CEO and their executive team. That always gives you a good sense of who they are. Including any press releases they may have done. New product launches, philanthropic work, things of that nature. I think from there, you can check out Glassdoor. So Glassdoor has a lot of content on there about, like what's the company like. People review the companies, they leave comments in the companies. The only thing I will tell you about Glassdoor is sometimes you see like both extremes. You see the people that either love the company or hate the company. You don't see a lot of in the middle. So just be aware of that. And that's kind of like a lot of online review sites, but you can get some good information from Glassdoor. Again, I think it goes back to the best way to find out about a culture, if you can't intern there before you work there full time, is to talk to the people that work there and actually have conversations with people that work there. And if you don't know someone personally that works there, I'm going to guess that you probably have someone in your network that knows someone that works there, and you ask your friend who knows someone to introduce you, and then have a phone call. I would say if you're going to do a lot of this networking and learn about a company, in the past you may have just used phone. It's okay to use video. Like everyone's pretty much getting used to video with what's going on right now. So if you can set up a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting or a FaceTime meeting to network with someone, I think that's a great idea. And I think the other thing around just the video while I'm on that topic is when you interview for a company virtually, you are going to use video in today's world. So be prepared. You want to make sure that, like you can see, like Lisa has a pretty cool background of UConn flag. My background, you can't see any of my kids' toys or any of the mess that's around the outside of the view of the camera. Those are just some fun tips because you're going to probably have to be on video for it. So I think when you do get an interview, you want to make sure you ask that question. Hey, is this an audio only or is this a video interview? And you want to make sure you test your computer before your video interview, because the last thing you would want is to go do the video interview and then something is not compatible with your computer and you missed the interview. That would not be obviously good prep. So I think this is a really important point in this world of virtual job searching.
That's great, Nick. I think you've offered some really great tips here. And I think one of the takeaways here that we heard over and over is be human, right? So you're working with people who are humans, and understand that none of us are robots. We're all facing challenges. You said it right at the beginning. We all handle the challenges differently, and if we have a little understanding for the recruiter that you're working with, the hiring manager that you're trying to work with, who's got kids, 6, 8, and 10 at home, and they're trying to hire somebody, have a little compassion on both sides. And if you're hiring somebody, hopefully the hiring manager also has similar compassion to someone who's been reaching out and not hearing, or they really need a job. So I think that's really important. So you've made some really great points, and we really appreciate your time and expertise. If you have one more parting thought, that's great, or we can.
Yeah. No, I'm thrilled. I was really excited when you asked me to come on. So I think the last thing I would say is, if any of you are interested in working at Cigna, we still have a variety of jobs open at cigna.com/careers. If you have questions about any of those jobs, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just search me, it's Nick Wagner Sr., and then I'd be happy to talk to you about any of those jobs at Cigna. Or if you're interested in another company, that I may have a connection with someone that's in an industry that you're looking into, and you need an intro, or you want to meet someone, just reach out. Your network is how you're going to find your next job. I truly believe that. So go out there, network, keep learning, keep working really hard, and I think, again, back to what I said originally at the beginning, Lisa, this is a difficult time for everyone. So I think acknowledging that and realizing that we're all kind of handling this change very differently is human, and it's okay to ask for help, whether that's your parents, whether that's your career center, whether that's your professor, your friends, your family, whatever the case may be. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, that's great. Great advice. Nice parting words, Nick. Thanks again. And thanks to everybody else who attended today's webinar. It is a part of our Advice and Perspective series where we bring in alums like Nick to talk about their areas of expertise, but also about their journey. And next week's event is at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and we're going to talk to an 09 alum, Fernando Alfonso III, who will talk about overcoming adversity in his journey leading to his current role as a reporter with CNN in Atlanta. Please check for the Center for Career Development's event calendar at career.uconn.edu for more information about upcoming webinars and more resources for your job search. As Nick and I both mentioned, we're happy to help both students and alums with your career search, and please use our website. We have a lot of online resources. We also have jobs, thousands of jobs listed all over the country, Connecticut, everywhere, in virtually every industry. So be sure to use that. It's your tool and open to UConn students and alum. So once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd really like it if you'd complete it and provide your feedback. It'll include a link to register for next week's event as well, and you'll also receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view this recording of today. So again, I thank you, and I hope you all have a good day and stay healthy. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks, Lisa.